17 years after the end of apartheid, are black voters losing faith in the ANC? Freedom hasn't brought prosperity, and many South Africans say the ruling party has failed them. So, could the ANC's iconic status take a tumble in the local elections? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Shiulie Ghosh. It seems inconceivable that South Africa's ruling party could lose ground to an opposition party that's seen as largely serving white interests. But that's precisely what's predicted to happen in Wednesday's municipal elections. Why? Because black voters in poverty-stricken townships say the African National Congress has failed to deliver on promises to improve their lives. And many are switching allegiance. From Johannesburg, Dr Natascha has more.
17 years after apartheid, and Winnie Mandela, Nelson Mandela's former wife, is an icon here. Those who played an active role in bringing democracy to South Africa know how to stir up emotions, especially during election time. But even they admit that's changing as South Africans grow impatient.
It is time we stopped blaming the past for the ills of our society. Difficult as it may have been, 17 years is not enough time to rectify the ills of the past, but it is about time. The people are saying that we delivered.
These local government elections are ultimately about service delivery, getting basic services like water, electricity, housing and jobs to the poor.
I just ask them, please, they must listen to people, for the cause of the people, so that there must be peace.
The ANC is facing its strongest opposition since the end of apartheid in 1994. In previous years, the Democratic Alliance, the largest opposition party, has been seen as a party for whites and those of mixed race. It's trying to appeal to the black majority. Soweto is historically significant to the ANC. Nelson Mandela used to live on the street, and the ruling party has a lot of support here. But this election has seen politicians from the Democratic Alliance campaign vigorously here, trying to get more black people to vote for them. But analysts say it's unlikely there will be a drastic shift in the country's political landscape just yet. The ruling party currently controls most of the country except the Western Cape province. But some here see this election as a test for the ANC and South Africa's president, Jacob Zuma. Dr Natascha for Inside Story, Johannesburg.
Well, let me introduce today's guests. In Aberdeen, Scotland, Natascha Mueller-Hirth, Research Fellow at the Department of Sociology at the University of Aberdeen. In Johannesburg, Mmusi Maimaine, the Democratic Alliance's mayoral candidate for Johannesburg. And in Pretoria, Jackson Mthembu, national spokesperson for the African National Congress. A warm welcome to all my guests. Jackson, let me start with you. More than 40% of the black population still live in poverty. No electricity, running water, sanitation. Why hasn't that changed?
Well, thank you very much for having us and asking such an important question. You will know that when we took over 17 years ago from the Apartheid regime, many of our people didn't have any of these services. In fact, when it comes to water provisioning, less than 50% had access to clean water. Less than 46% had access to electricity. And very minimal statistics had access to decent sanitation. Not to mention issues of housing. Many of our people didn't have any access to actual housing. But as we speak now, indeed, a lot has been done, but there is still a lot more that needs to be done. Since the dawn of democracy, over 94% of our people now, particularly in the rural settings of our country, have got access to clean water. precisely because of the advent of our democracy and the ensuring that our people in our rural areas have access to these basic services.
Absolutely,
Also,
I agree with that, but there is still a huge unemployment problem. There's still a huge unemployment problem. There's still a huge problem with lack of education. Winnie Mandela herself has said that it is time that the ANC started to deliver. So why should people vote for you?
Well, they voted. Let's first start there, because I'm not in an election mode now. I'm in an IEC results center. The people of this country understand exactly where they come from. They understand that we cannot change neglect and underdevelopment of over 300 years only in 17 years. Having said that, yes, we have tweaked our education system. It's better, and in fact, we're even making it more better and more competitive. Yes, we have got problems of unemployment precisely because the education that our kids got, that all of us got under the apartheid regime, made us not employable, let alone making us to have the necessary skills that are needed by the South African economy. So indeed, things are changing for the better, and these 5 years that are coming, we have said in these 5 years, whilst we have done better in terms of other services, these 5 years should be concentrated on making sure that we grow the economy, but we make sure that indeed our people are employed.
Let me bring in Mmusi here. Jackson makes the point that it is too soon after the end of apartheid to deliver services to all 50 million people, that the ANC have made progress. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think firstly, it's a great privilege to be on the show, but I think what's important to note is that South Africa has in the last 17 years made some progress. The problem that we're holding and actually arguing in this election is exactly what is the trajectory of this country. We're seeing indicators broadly that are indicating that at a macroeconomic climate, the gap between rich and poor is widening. We're realizing that people are becoming more and more unemployed, and this is against the backdrop of a practice that is certainly within government here, where not the best people are always attracted to administration. So we've got to answer the question about what does the future of South Africa look like against that backdrop. And I fully appreciate the fact that we've come out of a very difficult past and we've inherited an apartheid legacy. But along with that, we've got to be quickly making decisions now that prepare us for the future.
Well,
and I'm
do you think the Democratic Alliance could do any better?
In those directions.
Could the Democratic Alliance do any better?
Well, certainly. I think, as you can appreciate, that we've been hosting a local government election here in South Africa, and one of the things that we're starting to see is that actually the discussion has to be about a comparison of service delivery records. And we're seeing that where the Democratic Alliance is governing, there's certainly clearly key indicators that suggest that we deliver better and we deliver basic services. And so I think the argument that I want to put forward is that the future of South Africa lies in us being able to take the imbalances of the past, bring people to the same starting line, and the way to do that is to address issues of education, but not only that, healthcare that is provided by local government, ensuring that young people who are growing up in townships or in areas where we're so disadvantaged in the past, that actually can get electricity, can get sanitation. And these are the challenges that we have to fight hard against if we're really going to make any dent in the issue of poverty and unemployment, etc.
Natascha, let me bring you in here. Give us an overview. Is there evidence that voters, particularly in the poorer black townships, are becoming disillusioned with the ANC, with the way things are now?
There certainly seems to be, and if we're looking at the 3 years or more leading up to this local election, there have been a continuous wave of township protests, services delivery protests, strikes and so on. So there has been a high level of unrest for quite some time, and there seems to certainly be some dissatisfaction with the ruling party and with what is perceived as a lack of service delivery, or certainly the slow pace of service delivery.
But what do you make of the argument from Jackson there that they have a legacy to contend with, which was hundreds of years in the making, and they've only had 17 years to contend with it?
Certainly, but it seems that for many people now, patience is slowly but surely running out. So the issue of service delivery needs to be tackled, and and that has been the key issue in this election, and both parties have sought to tackle that issue.
OK, let's just take a quick breather here to have a look at the backgrounds of the main political parties. The African National Congress, of course, has dominated South African politics since the first post-apartheid elections of 1994. Now, its share of votes did drop slightly in the 2009 elections, but it's never before faced any serious political challenges. Now, though, many people are questioning the quality of its governance. Millions of people still lack running water, sanitation, schools and healthcare. The rate of unemployment hasn't improved. 1 in 4 people remain jobless. About 45% of the population lives in poverty. Many accuse the ANC of ignoring widespread government corruption. Inexperienced party loyalists hold key government positions and nepotism is common. The main opposition party, as we've said, is the Democratic Alliance. It already governs Cape Town and the Western Cape province. The party leader is Helen Zille. In the 2006 elections, the party won 67 out of 400 seats in the National Assembly. The Democratic Alliance has been actively campaigning in townships to gain new voters and shed its elitist image. The party says it's confident it will steal a few municipalities from the ANC. Mmusi, what has the Democratic Alliance been doing to try and change this image of your party as being a party led by whites, for whites and mixed race people?
I think firstly, statistically, we can see that the Democratic Alliance is the most diverse party in South Africa. We've preached a message that is consistent with what Nelson Mandela proclaimed of a non-racist, non-sexist society. And so we've gone ahead and put that as part of our campaign message. We've also equally so ensured that even in our candidate selections, in our processes that engage communities, that we've ensured that we've diversified our offering right throughout. And we've gone to every length to ensure that we attract the best to administration, but also appreciating the fact that in all communities that we're looking to grow, to ensure we do that. I think also another critical issue is to look at how we've allocated distribution of resources. It's important to note that we've gone out of our way to ensure that resources are delivered to all. So it's about ensuring that actually when we look at areas that are poor, areas such as Khayelitsha and the Western Cape, areas such as Langa, that there's been a strong strategic objective in terms of bringing resources to those communities. So I think looking forward, we've wanted to maintain that we want to ensure that we're a party attractive to all South Africans from all races and make sure we can deliver to all in this regard.
OK, but I mean, let's be realistic here. You might make some gains in these elections, but you're not going to change the political landscape very much, are you?
Well, I think it's important to note that if you look at even these current results, there's been some growth within from the Democratic Alliance. If you look at the base that we've put forward, there's been a continual growth. And I think looking forward, we really have set up a platform from which we can contest the 2014 elections and the 2019 elections. So it's a process of steady growth. And we must appreciate that we come from a very segregated past. And part of addressing that is being able to provide an opposition that is credible, that is diverse, that ensures that it stands for South Africans, and also being able to have a platform and a base big enough to be able to build from. And I think we're seeing some of those shifts taking place even currently. In fact, the fact that even this election has been reduced to a 2-horse race is complementary to the fact that we're starting to see these shifts that are taking place in South Africa.
What do you say to that, Jackson? Are you worried by the Democratic Alliance and the gains that they're making?
Not at all. If we look at the election results as we speak now, the ANC is standing at around 63% of the South African vote. Now, 63% by any standards is quite a massive support.
Well, no one's suggesting that the ANC is going to lose, but what we are saying is that the Democratic Alliance is making gains, and early figures show that it's actually improved on what it had in 2006.
In fact, they've made gains from capitalizing on the smaller parties. We have not been threatened as the ANC, particularly in our strongholds. They have not made any inroads into the ANC strongholds.
But Jackson, you can't be complacent about this, can you? You can't be complacent about this because a lot of voters are voicing their dissatisfaction with the ANC. One voter is saying, you know, I want to vote for the black administration, but I can't eat patriotism. So you've got to take account of that.
Can we just compare apples with apples? Those who have gone on protestation, all of them without exception, including in Zanspruit in Joburg, Diepskloof in Joburg, Standerton in Mpumalanga, and Balfour in Mpumalanga, all of them, those who were protesting, have voted for the ANC. It simply means that whilst they were protesting against their own government, they think the only people who have got answers to their problems is the African National Congress. They have not taken their vote to the DA. So it's a fallacy to say that these protests have hurt the ANC. More than anything else, these protests have made the ANC to resolve to do even better in those communities. But the DA has delivered to white people only. Where they are governing. You go to Canaan in Gugulethu, you go to black areas, you go to colored areas, there is no service delivery. People are living like pigs. You go to former white areas, Stellenbosch and other white areas in Cape Town. Those are first-class citizens within the Cape Town metropole.
Mmusi, what do you say to that? Jackson's making the point that you're delivering services to white areas only. What do you say to that?
I think firstly that I need to remind Jackson that the Minister of Cooperative Governance, Minister Sicelo Shikeka, made the point that in the DA-run municipality of the Western Cape, there was improved access to services across the board, in areas that, when we recall that when the ANC was in charge of the Western Cape, we inherited over 224 municipalities that had no access at all. They had no services being brought to them at all. And since the Democratic Alliance has taken place, there have been improved services to those areas, according to the very said minister. And other independent surveys affirm that. But
Jackson, what do you want to say?
What's important to note is that what we want to ensure. But Jackson is arguing that.
Have you been there?
I have. Langa has had improved services. If you look at Khayelitsha, we've put a CBD there. We've put a library there. If you want, the problem what's happening in this country at the moment is that we're trying to make these. Jackson, if I can also remind you that I've also been to Diepskloof, I've also been to Protea South, where there are very black people that are not. It's inaccurate to say that because we're proving that our access to services has improved all across. What you're trying to argue is that you're trying to argue that.
Jackson, let Mmusi finish his point and then you can come in and respond. Mmusi, go ahead.
But what I'm trying to say is that the African National Congress has tried to make this election about race. They've consistently drove the message to say that the DA delivers only for white people instead of black people, which is actually stepping our country in a backward direction. What we're arguing is that when you look at our budgets, when you look at the processes, you can see clearly the allocation of resources.
No, Jackson, that is a fair point, and that is an opinion that a lot of analysts have said, that the ANC is making this about race, that voters are being told that, you know, they have to vote for the ANC because the ANC is the party that gave them the vote in the first place.
No. I've just talked about service delivery. I've talked about water. I've talked about electricity. I've talked about housing. I've not talked about freedom. Now, maybe I should take you to Canaan in Gugulethu and see how people live in shacks that have got water inside. They have no basic services. In fact, they live like pigs.
But Jackson, sorry, I just want to bring this back. Jackson, I want to bring this back to the point that Mmusi was making. Are you expecting the black majority to vote for the ANC just because you are the ANC? Are you taking them for granted?
No. They are, in fact, they have voted for us, not because they are stupid. They voted for the ANC because the ANC has delivered where they are, but there is still a lot to do to deal with the backlogs and legacies of apartheid and colonial rule. Our people understand that. They understand that the ANC has done better. That's why we are sitting at 63% now. In the poll that we have had yesterday in this country, where is the DA? The DA is sitting at 23%. And in fact, their increase is basically taking away from the other smaller parties, not from the ANC support base.
Okay.
Precisely because people of this country understand that the ANC has done a lot for them and has got a program to do more. But we are not electioneering here. The results are a proof that people believe in the ANC, not in the DA.
Natascha, let me ask you, how much is the political landscape in South Africa dictated by the voters' sense of identity and solidarity with the ANC?
Well, I think it's huge and it remains huge. I think people's relationships to the ruling party are complex and they're often deeply personal relationships that tie into histories of the struggle and so on. And I think that remains really important. But another point I wanted to make is about the relatively low turnout of voters, again, in these local elections, which seems to me to possibly suggest that neither of the parties address some of the issues at the heart of their constituents.
And there's a lack of choice for voters as well, isn't there? It seems to be one or the other. I mean, how are the smaller parties faring?
Well, it seems that the two-horse race scenario is now becoming more likely, and that seems to be the case as we're looking forward to the national elections in 3 years as well.
And what do you make of the fact that there is a lot of talk about race? I mean, I guess this suggestion that the Democratic Alliance caters for white interests, the ANC caters for black interests. Is this more about race politics rather than making informed decisions about who might best provide for the country in the future, Natascha?
Well, it seems that the DA has really diversified a lot over the last few years, which has been interesting and which I think is really important to all the discussions we're having here. But also, race has not been replaced by class, and race continues to be important in terms of shaping inequalities even now, but certainly in its intersections with class or gender, for example. So it hasn't got the same relationship to inequality as it did under apartheid, but it certainly continues to shape inequality.
Yeah, race is one thing, religion's another. In February, President Jacob Zuma told supporters they risked going to hell if they didn't back his ANC party. He said, when you vote for the ANC, you're also choosing to go to heaven. When you don't vote for the ANC, you should know that you are choosing that man who carries a fork, who cooks people. Jackson, that's pretty offensive, isn't it? If you don't vote for the ANC, you're going to hell?
Well, you will know that many of the presidents of the ANC were by themselves priests, people of the cloth. And in fact, when we were born, there were so many people of the cloth, it was just unbelievable. On the 8th of January 1912 in Mangaung. So indeed, we believe in God, even our policies rhythm with biblical teachings. So indeed, we might put things differently, but all was saying that in fact, we have got parties in this country that call themselves Christian parties. They want to appropriate themselves all Christian wisdom, as if the major population of this country do not believe in Jesus Christ and God. And nothing is said about those, but people are eager to point at Comrade Jacob Zuma saying that the ANC believes in God. We do. And indeed, even our policies are not anti-God. Our policies are not anti-Jesus. So we think people are just trying to make something big out of a teacup. But having said that, the ANC now stands at 63%, the DA stands at 23%. Now, you can't call that a two-horse race unless you have got a problem with arithmetic. 63 is overwhelming, is convincing.
Mmusi,
23 can't be next to 20.
He does have a point, doesn't he, Mmusi?
Now, I don't understand what do you mean by a two. People of South Africa have every trust and believe in the ANC. That's why we're standing at 63. DA is standing at 23. You can't call that a two-way horse race. What? Unless there is something upset with you.
But Jackson, I appreciate your strong interest in what happens with the DA, and I think that it's very complimentary that almost nearly half of Siyanqoba was focused on the DA. So clearly in other contexts, you do see the DA as part of an opposition party that is emerging in South Africa, and that poses a threat to you.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed,
we have no problem with that.
For a great discussion. Thank you to all our guests, Dr Natascha Mueller-Hirth, Mmusi Maimaine and Jackson Mthembu. And thank you at home for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you have any comments, just email us on insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Shiulie Ghosh. Bye-bye for now.